In the year 9 AD, the Roman Empire was the undisputed ruler of the known world. With over 300,000 elite legionnaires, endless gold, and a battle-tested war machine, Rome didn't just win wars, it crushed civilizations. From the desert sands of Egypt to the sunny shores of Spain, if Rome wanted your land, they took it. And then, in the gloomy, rain-drenched wilderness of northern Europe, 3 entire Roman legions, over 20,000 invincible soldiers, walked into a dense forest and simply vanished off the face of the earth. Not a single general survived, not a single eagle banner made it back. In just 72 hours, a loose coalition of Germanic tribesmen armed with wooden spears, iron axes, and pure rage handed the superpower of the ancient world the most embarrassing, terrifying defeat in its entire history. So, how on earth did a bunch of tribesmen living in mud huts obliterate the greatest army on the planet? How did a tiny German tribe make the almighty Emperor Augustus bang his head against the wall in pure horror, screaming into the night? Well, to understand this absolute disaster, we need to rewind 2,000 years to a time when Rome thought it could conquer the wild northern frontier. Look at this map. By 9 AD, Emperor Augustus had built the ultimate empire. Gaul was conquered, Greece was pacified, and Egypt was essentially Rome's personal bank account. There was only one major gap left in Europe: Germania. To the Romans, Germania was a dark, nightmare realm. It was thousands of miles of unbroken oak forests, freezing bogs, and endless rain. The Romans believed the people living there were giant, hairy savages who spent their days drinking beer, fighting wild boars, and brawling with each other. Naturally, Rome decided, hey, let's turn this terrifying jungle into a Roman province. So, Augustus sent a man named Publius Quintilius Varus to govern the region. Now, Varus wasn't a military genius. He was a wealthy, arrogant politician who was used to governing peaceful, civilized territories like Syria. Varus marched into Germania thinking he was dealing with mindless peasants. He started imposing Roman taxes, enforcing strict Roman laws, and treating proud tribal chieftains like common criminals. Wait, Varus actually thought this was going to be easy? Sir, these Germanic tribes are incredibly fierce warriors. Shouldn't we build forts and stay on high alert? Alert? Please. They're uncultured barbarians. They'll pay their taxes in beaver furs, learn Latin, and thank us for civilizing them. Sir, they're staring at us with axes. Nonsense! Hand them a tax bill. Varus had no idea that his arrogance was driving the tribes straight into a secret rebellion. But his biggest mistake wasn't underestimating the Germans, it was trusting one specific young man named Arminius. Arminius was a 25-year-old chieftain of the Cherusci tribe, but he wasn't just any tribesman. As a child, Arminius had been taken to Rome as a noble hostage. He grew up in the heart of the empire, received an elite Roman education, learned Latin, and mastered Roman military tactics. He served in the Roman army with distinction, gained Roman citizenship, and was even knighted as a Roman officer. To Varus, Arminius was a brilliant, loyal young protege, a shining example of a civilized barbarian. What Varus didn't realize was that Arminius's heart remained fiercely German. While drinking wine with Roman generals by day, Arminius was secretly meeting with tribal leaders by night. Germania was fractured into dozens of rival tribes who constantly fought each other. But Arminius used his charisma and brilliant rhetoric to unite these ancient enemies around a single, terrifying goal: total destruction of the Roman occupation. And in the autumn of 9 AD, Arminius laid the ultimate trap. Varus was preparing to march his army from their summer camp on the Weser River back to their winter quarters near the Rhine. His column was massive: 3 full Roman legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, 6 auxiliary cohorts, 3 cavalry squadrons, plus thousands of civilian camp followers, wives, servants, and supply wagons. Over 20,000 people stretched out in a long, clumsy line. Just before they departed, Arminius approached Varus with a grave expression. He reported that a local tribe deeper in the forest had just started an uprising. He urged Varus to take a slight detour through a narrow, uncharted forest path to crush the revolt before heading to winter quarters. Arminius promised to ride ahead with his own Germanic horsemen to gather reinforcements. Another loyal German chief named Segestes actually warned Varus, pleading, "Don't trust Arminius. He's a traitor, arrest him now!" But Varus laughed it off, assuming Segestes was just jealous of the young officer. "Varus, I am telling you, Arminius is plotting your murder. Chain him up." "Oh, Segestes, stop being so dramatic. Arminius loves Rome. He's a Roman knight, for Jupiter's sake. He's leading you into a graveyard, you fool!" "Guards, show Segestes out. Now, where is Arminius?" "Ah, off to fetch our allies. What a reliable young man." Varus led his massive column off the paved Roman military road and straight into the dense, muddy labyrinth of the Teutoburg Forest. It was a fatal mistake. The forest was so thick that the Romans had to chop down trees just to squeeze their supply wagons through. Their 20,000-strong army was stretched out into an extremely thin, 6-mile-long line of disorganized soldiers, women, and heavy carts. And then, the weather turned catastrophic. A fierce, torrential storm erupted over the canopy. Gale-force winds ripped massive oak branches from trees, and torrential rain turned the unpaved forest floor into a deep, gooey mud bath. The legionnaires were weighed down by 60 pounds of heavy iron armor, soaked leather shields, and waterlogged gear. They could barely walk, let alone fight. And that's precisely when the forest came alive with blood-curdling war cries. Out of the misty thicket poured thousands of Germanic warriors. Arminius had positioned his forces along elevated ridges, hiding behind the dense trees. Because Arminius knew Roman tactics inside out, he engineered the ultimate nightmare for Roman doctrine. Roman soldiers were trained to fight in tight, disciplined formations. But in this narrow, muddy trail, jammed between thick trees, they couldn't form a line. They couldn't use their gladius short swords or lock their massive shields together. They were trapped in a single-file corridor of death. Germanic spears rained down from the trees like relentless hail. The first day of battle was a chaotic bloodbath. The Romans managed to establish a crude fortified camp at night, but they were exhausted, terrified, and surrounded. On the second day, Varus ordered his men to burn their heavy supply wagons to move faster. They tried to break out into open countryside, but the storm grew even more violent. Rain soaked their wooden shields, making them impossibly heavy to lift and rendered bowstrings completely useless. By the third day, the surviving Romans were funneled into the narrowest choke point of the entire forest, Calcrece Hill. Look at this map. On one side was a steep, forested hill. On the other side was an impassable, murky swamp. The path between them was barely 30 feet wide, and to make matters worse, Arminius had constructed a massive turf embankment wall along the hill, giving his warriors an elevated rampart. As the panicked Roman column squeezed into this narrow bottleneck, Arminius gave the signal. Thousands of German warriors swarmed over the earthen wall, descending on the trapped Romans like a wave of iron and wood. It was no longer a battle, it was a methodical massacre. Roman legionnaires were cut down where they stood, slipping in mud and their comrades' blood. Panic shattered what remained of Roman discipline. Cavalry officers abandoned the infantry to save themselves, only to be hunted down and slaughtered in the bogs. Seeing that all was lost and fearing the horrific fate that awaited a captured Roman general, Varus drew his sword, held it to his chest, and fell on his own blade. "The gods have abandoned us. Rome has fallen in the dark. General Varus is dead! The line is broken! Run for your lives!" Most of the senior officers followed Varus's example, taking their own lives rather than facing capture. By nightfall on the third day, the legendary 17th, 18th, and 19th legions had ceased to exist. Out of more than 20,000 Roman soldiers, officers, and civilians, only a tiny handful of traumatized survivors managed to crawl through the bloody brush and reach Roman forts along the Rhine River. The victorious Germanic tribes captured all three sacred Roman eagle standards, a spiritual and military disgrace from which Rome would never truly recover. Arminius cut off Varus's head and sent it to a neighboring king as proof that the invincible Romans could, in fact, be bled. When news of the disaster finally reached Rome, absolute panic gripped the capital. Citizens genuinely believed that thousands of screaming German warriors were marching straight for the gates of Rome itself. Emergency guards were posted across the city, and foreign citizens were rounded up in fear of subversion. Emperor Augustus was utterly devastated. The 75-year-old ruler went into deep, dark mourning. He refused to cut his hair or shave his beard for months, tearing his imperial robes in utter grief. Roman historians recorded that Augustus would wander through the marble halls of his palace late at night, banging his head against wooden doors, weeping out loud, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions, give them back to me!" Augustus never got his legions back. The shock of Teutoburg Forest broke Rome's expansionist spirit in northern Europe forever. Although Rome later sent generals like Germanicus on brutal punitive expeditions to recover the lost eagle banners and punish the tribes, Rome permanently abandoned its dream of conquering Germania east of the Rhine River. The Rhine River became the hard, permanent border between the Roman Empire and the Germanic world for the next 400 years. To ensure the shame was never forgotten, the Roman army officially retired the legion numbers not the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. No Roman legion would ever carry those numbers again for the rest of Roman history. In the end, Arminius and his coalition of tiny, overlooked Germanic tribes didn't just win a single battle. They drew a line in the sand that permanently shaped the culture, language, and political map of modern Europe. They proved that no matter how big, rich, or arrogant a superpower becomes, a united group of people fighting for their native soil can change history forever. Insane, right? But you know what's even crazier? Over in North Korea, every single family is legally forced to collect 1 ton of human poop every year for the government. Click here to watch the mind-blowing secret history of North Korea. I'll see you over there!